Christine Schneider, the Visceral Voice.
Welcome to the Visceral Voice podcast. I'm your host, Christine Schneider. Through this podcast, I aim to bring you the most current, up-to-date research on voice science, function, pain science, movement, and everything in between. I am on a quest to learn everything I can about the living, breathing body and its intricate connection to the voice. This podcast documents the continuation of my learning and my experience as a professional singer, a nutritional consultant, a movement specialist, and a manual therapist. Join us as we strive to provide current, knowledgeable, creative, and compassionate information to help you restore, regain, and create happiness and success on your vocal journey. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. On today's episode, I have a conversation with Abby Halpin. This is the first of 4 episodes with Abby. And Abby is a physical therapist and a coach for musicians and performers. Her practice, Forte Performance and Physical Therapy, provides virtual and mobile sessions to help musicians feel healthy and sound their best. Abby is a singer and a pianist and knows what it takes and feels like to be a musician. She has led workshops and masterclasses on how movement affects singing and playing for organizations such as the National Association of Teachers of Singing, Northwest Voice, and the Vermont Music Teachers Association, as well as individual studios. Abby's mission is to demystify confusing messages about movement, posture, and breathing so musicians can feel empowered in their bodies and, most importantly, put their focus on the music. On today's episode, Abby and I have a conversation about in-network versus out-of-network physical therapy. I wanted to have this conversation because I feel like a lot of people think, PT didn't work for me. And I wanted to kind of explain how the system works a little bit so that you know that there's still other stuff out there that can be helpful. There are physical therapists who are phenomenal, and probably the physical therapist you saw was phenomenal, but part of it has to do with the information that Abby will help give today. So here you are, my conversation with Abby Halpin on in-network versus out-of-network physical therapy. Hello, Abby. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yay. Thanks so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk with you. We have been talking throughout the summer and just geeking out. And so I wanted to bring you on and chat with you a number of times. We have a few different conversations. You are pretty much my fall series along with a couple other episodes. So in this one, since it's the first one, why don't you go ahead and just tell the listeners a little bit about you and how you came in to be a physical therapist and into music and all of the things.
I am a physical therapist and personal trainer in Vermont, and I have a practice called Forte Performance and Physical Therapy. I grew up playing the piano and singing and also playing the cello, although that was kind of my fun instrument that I didn't really practice. But and then also was an athlete and dancer, and I was kind of somebody who just dabbled in all of the activities. And throughout high school was planning on going to school to be a music teacher. And I was working on audition pieces. I wanted to go to Ithaca College. I had a whole plan. And at some point just went 180 and realized I wanted to keep music more in the fun activity hobby realm of my life. And kind of it's not the other side anymore, but at the time it felt like the other side of my personality was more of that sports athlete person. And I was working in a PT clinic as a high school student, helped at the front desk after school, did laundry, that kind of stuff. And just kind of looked around one day and realized these people are really cool. They were fun and smart, and they got to think really hard at work and help people. And they were part of the community. You know, everybody kind of knew who they were and knew when to use them as resources. And it just looked like a really cool life. So luckily, Ithaca College also has a great physical therapy program. And so I could kind of keep that goal still going, and got into the PT program and worked in outpatient PT for, gosh, I want to say 8 or 9 years, kind of in the standard like outpatient orthopedic clinic. And I had the chance to work with some really wonderful, smart humans, and eventually got completely fed up with the entire system. Not the physical therapy aspect or the being a physical therapist, but the logistics that I had to work with in order to help my patients. And had an opportunity to rent a room inside of a gym in Seattle and start this out-of-network practice, and just jumped on it. It seemed like a lifeline at the time. And that was about 3 years ago. So I've been working in out-of-network practice since then, and I love it.
We're going to get into that because that is the topic for today in network versus out of network. But really quick, so you are a PT and a PT. And I bring this up because some people will tell me, oh, hey, yeah, I'm a PT. And I say, oh, you're a physical or physiotherapist? And they'll say, oh, no, I'm a personal trainer. And I'm like, okay, that's tricky, right? Because it's personal trainer and it's physical therapist. And those are very, very different therapists. One's a therapist, one's a trainer. So
absolutely. I often joke that is it capital letters or lowercase letters? Because it's just people write them differently.
I've never heard that, but I love that. I'm going to take that note.
In general, I see physical therapist in capital letters. I don't know. I don't know if everybody else sees that, but yeah, it's kind of a bummer that they have the same letters, to be honest, because they're like close enough, but not at all the same.
I mean, really, the physical therapist is taking someone from injury to functional movement, and then a movement specialist and definitely a movement specialist, and some personal trainers will then take from that functional movement to optimal movement. That's kind of why the category of movement specialist came about, because it was kind of PTs kind of helping from injury to functional. And then it was like, well, if you're in between and you're almost functional, but not quite, what do you do? And so then people started getting trained as movement specialists to kind of fill in the gap between what physical therapists are doing. And then they're 12 to 18, or we're going to talk about that because you know way more about how many sessions you're allotted. And then off you go and hope you get better, you know.
I got my personal training certification many years into my career as a physical therapist for that reason, because I was having a hard time handing my patients off to people that I could trust. I know a lot of personal trainers who are fantastic, but it was always this like, can they get in with that person who's the perfect fit? I mean, there's just so many variables. And so I went for the personal training certification to like broaden my ability to get them further into the fitness realm, where then they could go to classes, they could go to, and they didn't need the one-on-one attention quite so much.
I have found that most people do not know that they understand that there's in-network versus out-of-network, but I think that when they are given a prescription to go see a physical therapist, that it's sort of localized to a certain area because of how the insurance billing is. And so maybe you as a physical therapist that is working in network finds out, okay, wow, this is really coming from the pelvis or something like that. And yet the prescription is for the shoulder, and I can't stray so much from the shoulder. I have to at least dabble there as much as possible because that's what the prescription is for. And I think a lot of people don't realize that when they're going to physical therapy, and then they're like, well, physical therapy didn't work for me. And it's like, okay, but it didn't mean the therapist wasn't fantastic. It didn't mean the physical therapist didn't see other things that were happening, but it can be kind of limited of what someone can do. And that's my outside opinion kind of looking in. Can you kind of chat more about it, having been in network versus out of network, on, what exactly happens with as someone comes into you and with a diagnostic code, and how far are you actually able to branch out, et cetera?
So when I was working in network, if someone came to me with a shoulder problem, there was nothing necessarily stopping me from doing a full evaluation and saying, hey, this is coming from an issue with the way that you weight shift through your pelvis or something like that. But what would end up happening is, if that was true, I would have to spend a lot more time defending that in documentation or in like peer-to-peer phone calls with the insurance company. So I could get away with doing it with the patient, but the implications of that was that I was spending my time defending it rather than spending time reading articles, looking up research information to get more information about what the patient needs, spending more time with the patient. I mean, it was really more of a time management problem, an energy management problem that went towards the insurance company rather than towards the patient. Now, that's not true across the board. There are some insurance companies that are really limited. There are, and the downside is, as a healthcare provider, you need to know which insurance companies are going to let you get away with that, quote unquote, get away with that, also known as providing good care, and who isn't. So you have to, be able to look at the chart and go, oh, this person has, XYZ insurance. I'm going to need to stick to just the shoulder. Or this one has XYZ insurance. I can, do an entire evaluation and really look to see what are the contributing factors here. But it's going to take that I'm going to end up needing to make this phone call to get more visits. So there's always this like strategy, like a game of Risk that's always happening in your head, where you have to be aware of the payment structure and if you're going to get paid, if the patient's going to be made responsible. There's just so many variables that when you have back-to-back patients, my first job, I had 20 patients a day, don't always have the time or the brain space to make that happen for every single person. It's just not possible as a human.
That is so many. It's 20 people a day. That's a lot. And yeah, what you said of having to try to get away with what is good care. And I mean, I'm not trying to diss on insurance companies here. Neither of us are trying to do that per se. Because we know that a lot of people, we need our insurance. It's the only way that we can get away, get certain care. But I do just want to kind of shine a light on the other side. As a practitioner, I do not take insurance. I've never taken insurance, and I've always been in private practice. So I've never worked anywhere that does. So being able to talk with you and kind of hear the differences of what you're able to do. So can you run us through what a session looked like when you were in network, and now that you're out of network in private practice, what does a session look like out of network?
In network, the problem was time crunch. So I would have 30 minutes. You'd be a new patient, come in. I'd have 30 minutes to get all of the information you need to tell me, do any testing to kind of confirm or rule out contributing factors that I think are adding to your experience. Give you a plan and a strategy to set in place and go through them physically with you to make sure that you had full understanding. And then I would have to write up a report, which I still have to write up a report, but write up a report that was geared more towards making sure that we could get paid for said visit. Each insurance company has a different requirement. Like for Medicare, I have to make sure I use the words verbal and tactile cues as needed for each exercise. Like each insurance has a different phrase or a different requirement that you have to be on top of that. What ends up happening is because you have so much to do in so little time, you end up seeing patients many more visits than you could if you had either more time with patients. And the reason the time crunch was there is because physical therapists don't get reimbursed by insurances enough to be able to have fewer patients per day. So you end up, clinics, in order to keep the lights on, have to see more patients in the week. So you have less time with the patients. Now being an out of network, I generally see patients for about an hour. And then the report that I write up is actually for the patient. So I write up a whole thing and a summary of this is what you told me, this is what I found, this is the strategy that we put in place. And these are the exercises or the practices I'd like you to put into place over the next week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks. Because I can spend more time with the clients, I see people far fewer. The average is about 3 or 4 visits. And I see them every like 2 weeks. So I can give them more to work on in between. So it just looks and feels completely different. The other biggest difference for me is that I have more time to sit and listen. And when I do that, patients already know the solution to their problem. You just kind of have to pull it out of them or give them the chance to talk long enough until they come up with it themselves. And that just wasn't really present in my in some of my in-network experiences, where it was a little bit like, okay, I have 30 minutes, let's go. I felt a lot more like I was talking at somebody and throwing plans at them instead of organically coming up with them together.
When you're able to listen and be able to come up with plans together and also help help individuals understand, pain is really scary. And there's been a lot of research that, I think when we all, at least when I started, and I don't want to assume that other therapists were the same way, but when I started, it's like I was chasing pain. It's like, where's the pain? Okay, where's the pain? Right. And now we know, like, we're not chasing pain. Someone might feel pain very far from where the actual cause is, right? If you're chasing pain, you're chasing a symptom. And that can be a really difficult thing when you're in network, because if someone goes to a doctor now, once we get to a certain age, you're going to see things on MRIs. That's just the way it's going to be, whether or not they're actually causing pain or symptoms. We don't know. It could have been there for 10 years before you ever started experiencing any symptoms around that. So say you do go in, as we've been using the shoulder, so we'll stay with the shoulder, and you start seeing some degeneration of the shoulder. And it's like, well, that must be what's causing your pain. But not taking into account that maybe someone has had a C-section or, other things, a car accident, etc., that could be happening somewhere down the chain. And so then we're kind of set and placed in a position to chase the pain, as opposed to find the cause. Where's that tightness of the cause? Release the tightness around the cause. And then that is what will relieve pain. So with you being in private practice now, with me being in private practice as well, with private practice practitioners, we're able to get to the cause faster, or maybe even get to the cause overall.
I think the other thing that it allows me to do is we talk a lot more about the life, when it's the term that I'm looking for, just the life happenings that may be contributing to pain. Somebody maybe having some degeneration of their shoulder joint, but also they're the only person who is capable of doing the yard work, and their support structure maybe not such that they can avoid using the shoulder or overtraining basically in a functional task kind of way. There's just so many variables to pain that have nothing to do with the structure. And even having the time to talk about the fact that the structure doesn't equal symptoms. Tissue damage does not equal pain, and pain doesn't equal tissue damage. That conversation is, one of the most important conversations to have. And so having the time to do that is everything.
And how our emotions affect that too. I know that when my neck starts hurting, it probably means that I'm feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. I've been the financial, provider for my family, the main financial provider. My husband is amazing and has been home with our daughter and is just about to go back to work. But I felt a lot of pressure, not placed on me by others, but placed on me by myself. And once I'm able to go, hang on a second, I am starting to go through this in my mind again, that I'm placing pressure on myself that doesn't need to be there, right? And then I start slowly getting out of that neck pain or whatever. So, noticing that some things like that can come into play too.
The point of having insurance is to make sure that you have access to healthcare when you need it. And that's wonderful. We have to have that. Unfortunately, in the current system, that you pay a premium to pay for your healthcare when you need it. The premium doesn't go to your healthcare provider. It goes to the insurance company, who then allocates it to the healthcare providers when you need it. So the healthcare providers are having to burn themselves out or work overtime, or, there's just there's so many things that the providers need to do to make sure that their business stays on top of things. And patients who rightfully have been paying to make sure that they get good care aren't always able to do that because of the way that the system is currently set up. And it would be wonderful if, paying X number of dollars a month equaled you knew that you would get solid care when you need it. It doesn't always line up that way right now.
What other things about in-network versus out-of-network that people might just not know or might just not think about?
Well, I can tell you kind of the story that made me go, okay, I need to make a change. And it had to do with a patient who had an insurance company who had hired a third-party company to monitor the uses of their benefits. And this is getting more and more common. And often what that means for the PT is that we end up having to write to this other company and say, this is why we need more visits. And so this particular patient was a dance instructor. Her livelihood depended on her being able to dance. And the insurance company had dance was kind of listed under the not medically necessary title because it's considered a recreational activity. But in this person's case, it's her work. Now, in my opinion, recreational activity should be covered as necessary because play is necessary for life. But aside from that, I had to rate her function out of 10. And one of the things she was having trouble with were things like getting up and down stairs or squats, like anything that she had to bend her knee for, AKA plies, if you're in the dance world, right? All of these landing from leaps, that kind of stuff. And so I had written, out of 10 for her ability to get up the stairs, I rated it as a 5. Now, the whole idea of rating out of 10 in the first place is hilarious to me. 10, what? Is this? Is it percentage? Is it 10 out of, is it pain? I don't know what those units are. And then they denied further treatment. So I had a peer-to-peer call with, they actually don't have PTs do those calls, or at least they didn't at the time. I was speaking with an RN. And she said that 5 out of 10 was actually pretty good. And those moments in time where you wish you could go back and have the clever thing, you thought of the clever thing to say later. This was the one time in my life where I thought of it on the spot in real life time. And I said, well, what do you suggest I do when my patient gets halfway up the staircase? And there was just kind of silence on the other side of the line. And she's like, okay, fine, you can have 6 more visits. Now, the reason this story is important is because this person had been paying for her health insurance. In her benefits packet, it says she gets 30 PT visits a year. But they're allocating visits every 2 to 6. They say, oh, for this problem, you can have 6 visits. For this problem, you can have 3 visits. Based on kind of an algorithm that says somebody with knee pain needs 6 PT visits, not based on the current status of what the patient's doing. So when you pay for your health insurance, you don't always get all the visits that are advertised to you. You get what this company is allocating for each problem. The downside to that is we don't always know when patients are going to get cut off. So they might say, oh, you're done, your visits are out, but we don't have that last visit, at least to put a strategy in place to at least have a patient go, okay, I know what to do for myself moving forward since I don't have access to these resources anymore. So that for me was kind of the last straw where I was kind of going, I can't spend my energy arguing. I'm not an argumentative person. I don't like having to put this persona on and get angry on the phone. It's like work for me to put my angry face on.
And anger lives with me way longer than anything else. So I'm like, I don't want to bring that up because then it's going to linger for another 20 minutes.
Right. And what I wish had happened was this person on the phone, this person is just the messenger, right? She didn't make the policies of the insurance company. But what I wish was she said, oh, this is her work. Her family's income depends on this. Let's make sure she gets the care she needs. And what can I do to help you? Instead of cutting off services because dance is listed under the medically unnecessary category. All that to say is make sure that you're getting the benefits that you pay for.
And that is what she did? right?
She ended up seeing an out of network PT to
She
finish her
did.
care. Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Okay, so then from there you went to out of network.
It has its pros and cons, as everything does, right?
Yeah.
Most,
Do you want
in
to
my
talk about
opinion,
that? Yeah.
yeah, in my opinion, mostly pros. The cons, of course, are access. So I work really hard to incorporate visits that people can pay kind of a graded tuition kind of thing, so that people can have access to me if needed, if they can't pay the rate that has been set. But because patients only need to be seen 3, 4, 5 visits and then they're done, oftentimes it ends up being either the same or less than if they paid their $50 to $100 copay 12 to 15 times in an in-network clinic. So it's almost like the finances are just allocated differently.
So they're actually saving money, even though they're spending more per session.
Right.
In the long run, they save money.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's my goal. My goal is to see patients, get them as much information as possible each visit and see them the fewest amount of times so that stays true. And in out-of-network clinics, patients can still submit their invoices to their insurance company to get reimbursed. What's important for clients to know is that when they do that, it's part of their out-of-network reimbursement. So it's not always at the same rate as if you went somewhere in network. So it's good to just do a little bit of research into the plan before you make expectations. But you can submit those claims and then get reimbursed directly as the patient from your insurance company.
And do you have to file for that, or do they?
I give them the invoice and they file it. I've done it as a patient myself. And with my particular insurance, it's very easy. It's on their website. I go into, submit super bill. That's what they're called, submit super bill. And I just upload it a PDF and write how much I spent and click submit. And then they come back and send me a check for whatever percentage of that my plan covers.
Do you have diagnostic codes that you use as a private practitioner, or are they CPT codes, or?
Yeah, they're the same diagnostic codes as if I was in network, and same treatment codes. The difference is that in out of network, you pay a flat fee. So say you're seeing, Joe Schmo PT and their rate is $160 for a session. In network, you don't necessarily know how much a visit's going to cost because it depends on the type of treatment that was rendered. So manual therapy might be, X number of dollars. Therapeutic activity might be X number of dollars. So it just depends on, you don't always know what your bill is going to look like until the visit has been completed. I like the flat fee thing. It just simplifies it. Everybody knows what's happening. The client knows what they're paying. The business knows what they can expect in terms of expenses versus revenue. It just simplifies things a lot. But, there are pros and cons to both. It just kind of depends on A, what kind of patient are you? And B, what kind of practitioner are you? Patients who have more simple presentations, you rolled your ankle and sprained it and you probably don't need that much care and it's pretty standard, care can go into an in-network clinic and get fantastic care, have it be covered by insurance, and it's straightforward across the board. Now, somebody's maybe been dealing with something for a long time, or they have something the way that you were describing where they're kind of chasing symptoms and there is some kind of epicenter somewhere that nobody's been able to kind of come up with yet, that it's beneficial to go somewhere or see a clinician who has more time and honestly more brain space to really dive in, do research, spend time with you. And that is often in the out of network community.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Can you talk a little bit more about what are some of the kind of acute injuries that could be really helped with? Yeah, go ahead and do in network. That's going to be really helpful, like a sprained ankle. Are there others that you would say, yeah, this would be helpful within network?
I mean, I would say anything relatively acute is probably very well served in the in network community. Things like post-op, you just had your knee replaced, or rotator cuff replacement, things where you're going to need PT for a very long period of time or a lot of hands-on treatment. That would be fantastic to stay in network for. anything that is related to like car insurance, or, like an auto claim, that kind of stuff, or workers' comp that somebody else is going to be paying for, stay in network. So there's a lot that can be serviced by in-network physical therapists. I'm speaking to my own profession here. I mean, anything that's kind of like obvious where the cause stems from, or if there was an incident like I fell and, onto my outreached arm and fractured my wrist, like there's just like a very obvious cause and effect. That's very easy to stay in network and get great care for that.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. Hopefully, I mean, it's helpful to hear, hopefully for some of our listeners of, okay, so when should I try to use in-network and when should I start to go elsewhere? And really, the main answer is if you've been going after something and you've been having pain for a while, that's chronic, then looking potentially elsewhere at out-of-network practitioners, someone like Abby, who can help you out and kind of actually find, like you mentioned, the epicenter of the cause as opposed to chasing the symptom. Yeah, I think that's really helpful.
And I think also if you can find a PT who has some experience or expertise in whatever your goals are. So if that's getting back to being able to like pick up your kids and, run around after them, or, in my case, getting back to playing the guitar or singing or playing the piano without pain or limitation, it's important to find somebody who has some expertise in that. And if you can find that in network, great. That's fantastic. I have found that a lot of the PTs who have a certain expertise in, or a certain population that they tend to like speak to more often, tend to be out of network.
I get a lot of questions. And so I'm excited to talk with you about this. As a movement specialist and a massage therapist, and you had mentioned, whether they do this and this and this and this, and you piece it all together and pay per, and you said, okay, there's a certain amount of manual treatment and then a certain amount of, physical exercises that are given and et cetera. So I get asked all the time, okay, where's the line? Where's the scope of practice, right? Between massage therapy and physical therapy, and especially massage therapy when we're also trained as movement specialists. So I say, just like I did, basically the physical therapist is getting from injury to functional, and then I'm helping getting from functional to optimal. Now I do practice medical massage. And so when you're working with, so we can co-treat, right? When you're working with someone on, I don't know, say a tendonitis or something, we are also able to co-treat because we're doing more of the manual treatment. That is what we're giving. So do you want to kind of chime in there and just talk about what you're doing as a PT, and then how we as massage therapists come in and kind of help co-treat someone?
I think that having both professionals on board helps to get either more frequent care, which is always nice and necessary, and then also utilizes the people who are particularly skilled. So massage therapists are obviously going to be experts in hands-on care. Some PTs are as well, but not everybody. And so it just depends on what individuals you have on your team and what they bring to the table. I see people mostly virtual, so I cannot do hands-on care. And so to have somebody, say I'm treating somebody in Southern Vermont where they're 2 hours away, having a massage therapist who's local that they can go to for the manual treatments. And so we can spend a whole hour of problem solving about movements and strategizing about how their day goes and talking about how pain works. I mean, all the other aspects of physical therapy, building, maybe a strength program or something like that. And then on top of that, they can go and see their massage therapist for some of the hands-on modalities. They're just getting double the care. I mean, there's just no downside to it at all. And my favorite thing is when people are friends and you can talk about it, like the communication between the two. So if I'm seeing someone that you can call me and say, hey, Abby, I saw Joe yesterday, and this is kind of what I was noticing that such and such a muscle is really seeming kind of bound down, or some area of their trunk is really bound down so their ribs can't expand or something. And I can go, great, let me give them some specific breathing exercises that will help them to expand into that region and also to compress something else to, we can kind of work together in that way. I never think more than one head working on a patient is a bad thing.
I agree. I think I have always been about building a team. And in the voice community, I always talk about your voice teacher and your speech therapist and your laryngologist and your body work. But in body work itself, we also have teams, right? I know chiropractors and physical therapists and osteopaths and acupuncturists, and I get treatment too from all of the above. I've had treatment from in the past, and then some currently as well. So I am all about building a team, having a team of people that you go to and that you trust, and that the teams do start forming relationships so that they are communicating about your care. I think that is very helpful in co-treating someone, is communication.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for talking about in-network versus out-of-network. And we're very excited because we're going to be back talking about many things this season. So thank you for kind of just giving us an inside view of kind of the other side view, right? Inside and other side view of what's happening. And that my goal here today with this episode was to make sure that people know that if you feel like PT didn't help you, there are other options and there are other things. And this was kind of an inside, a little peek into what in-network is. And that I really do believe that great care can be provided. So awesome. Thank you for being here with me.
You're so welcome. Thank you. You got me on my snarkiest topic first off. That was fun. Thank you so much, Christine.
Thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, tell your colleagues, students, and friends. Subscribe, rate, and please write a review. You can find us on Instagram or Facebook, and feel free to check out my website at www.thevisceralvoice.com for information on programs and upcoming events. I hope you join us next time for another wonderful conversation on the Visceral Voice.